Hi, welcome to the Cows Podcast. I'm your host, Hunter Burney. A catalyst is defined as a person or thing that precipitates an event. A catalyst is something that it participates in a reaction, but does not get consumed in the reaction. There's a heart behind this podcast for, people with aspirations. There's a heart behind this podcast for motivated people that want to make a difference, that have a bias for action, that really, truly want to be a catalyst in the environment around them, both professionally and personally, in their homes, in their workplace, and beyond. So welcome to this podcast. I really hope you're enjoying the series that we're in. Welcome to this episode, and let's dive right in. Welcome back. We are in segment 2 here with Coach Jimmy Hayes Nelson, a very interesting and dynamic background, and he's really got a heart for helping people tell their story and coaching. And we just really left off in the conversation with talking about the ability to tell that story. And just, I think probably where we head next with this, Jimmy, is just kind of those practical steps to developing that. Can you just kind of share? I mean, I know a coaching session that you do and that we were just referring to is not something that's super brief, but, is there a way we can kind of condense that and just maybe 30,000 foot view?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought us this way, because I think we've all heard a podcast or been to the event where you kind of hear the rah, and you're like, yeah, I'm ready to do this. And then you're like, wait, what do I do? Right. And so for me, I didn't realize that 20 years as a performer, living in New York City for, 4 years and doing, musicals and stage plays and network TV and national tours and stuff were preparing me for this. Primarily, I got started in the health and fitness industry. We talked about in my early 20s, 100 pounds overweight, 3-time college dropout, ended up losing the weight, moving to New York City, like gaining that confidence back. And what I realized is, as I started my very first business and venture was in being an online health and fitness coach, is I just started telling stories about me. It wasn't even like the big story. It was the first 5 pound story, right? It's the, hey, I made my first check, I made a $50 commission today. That was kind of cool. And these little stories, because I think what people do is they think my story isn't big enough. And so, that person right now that's taking notes, because smart people take notes. It's number one, I need you to know your story is perfect where it is right now. Your story, it isn't, I need, so perfect example. I'll talk about a client of mine she was also building an online health and fitness business. And she said, hey, Jimmy, I really want to be a great health and fitness coach. I want to be an online coach. But I need 40 more pounds to lose, because I've only lost 30 pounds and I need 40 more and I really haven't even started exercising. And I was like, whoa, time out, back up. What did you just say? She's like, yeah, well, I still have 40 pounds to lose and I need to be better about my exercise because I've only lost 30. And I'm like, yo, do you realize you're sitting on a 7-figure business? She's like, what? I've only lost 30 pounds. I said, exactly. I said, do you know that you're a rock star and a hero losing 30 pounds? So that person that's been sitting on their couch thinking about maybe getting started, You figured something out. And so if I had a number one step, it's that you are an expert to someone else with your story right now. Yeah. You don't think you are because you're too close to what you did. You don't think it's that big a deal. You're like, hey, I did it. So everybody knows this. And we all fall victim to this. Or we think, hey, this other person they have a bigger podcast. They've made more money online. They have a bigger weight loss story. They have bigger clients. They have more Instagram followers. Therefore, I have no place until I have their stats. Yeah. And I have fallen victim to that. When I was moving into this space to start being a speaking and a storytelling coach, I know people in this space. A lot of them I've worked with. Mm-hmm. I've worked in tandem with. I've hired them, and I'm like, they're friends of mine. And I was like, oh, well, everybody's going to hire, X, Y, and Z. Everybody knows those people. But I was like, no, that's silly. It's silly to think that everybody in the world knows the 3 people that you know because you're in your industry, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's what I told another client. Also she was kind of building her online business. But she's like, I'm not really great. She was trying to see, hire other people to see if they wanted to be coaches as well. It was like kind of a network marketing structure. And she's like, Jimmy, I'm really good about talking about my products, but I'm not really good about talking about the business. And I said, why not? She's like, I don't think I've made enough money to be able to do this. I said, okay, Karen. Karen.
Okay, Karen.
And her name actually is Karen. Karen has now become a punchline, but her name actually is Karen.
That's awesome.
And I said, Karen, I said, tell me one thing, because she was doing this as a side hustle, right? I said, tell me one thing you've been able to pay for since you started your business with your side hustle. She's like, oh, Jimmy, that's easy. She's like, me and my girlfriends like to go get our hair and our nails done every week. And now I don't feel guilty about taking that money out of the family fund because I can go treat myself. I was like, again, I said, you can build a business over giving women permission to go spend Target money or go get their nails done or what. I was like, it doesn't have to be this rags to riches story. Those are great too. In fact, because I've lost 100 pounds, I have to fight against that, right? So I have to share other small increment stories. And so number one, it's that one. It's that your story is perfect where it is today. And the other part where I really do what I do is I usually take people through some kind of story memory jogger. So at Hunter, if you and I were going to sit down and I talk about the podcast and I'm like, well, why do you do this? Tell me about Catalyst. And you start talking about that. And I was like, so this is what you always done? And we start, nope. And we start moving back. Oh, I had this job. Okay. Well, what made you that job? Well, I had to, and usually we'll find a story that somewhere it usually happens between the ages like 5 and 15. Sometimes they're a little later. If you're like, oh no, there was this time as a kid. And sometimes we didn't realize it in the moment. I didn't know in that first grade, Jimmy didn't know where he was going with this. Sure. But once I ended up where I ended up and I started backtracking, that's the story I came to.
Yeah.
And so I think for that first one, it's going through a memory jogger. Sometimes I'll sit down with a client and I'm like, it's silly things like, tell me the story of your first car. Tell me about your worst date. Tell me about a sports time. Did you play sports in school? And once we start thinking, we realize we have some more stories than we really thought we did.
Yeah, that's cool. No, I would need that. And I think, it's just interesting to me, like the thread of, being able to tell your story is part of the reason I'm here, right? It's part of the reason that I took this on. I wouldn't say that I was super confident with my voice and all that when I started this. And I think it's a journey, right? It's not something that it's binary that just flips overnight. It's a journey.
Not at all.
I think, there's a lot of things that can apply just personally and professionally as you think about the ability to tell your story. I mean, I'm in sales now professionally, but before I was, there's still that element of being able to tell the story, right? And connect others to your purpose, right? When if you think about like a leadership position, you have an initiative, you have a project, you have some kind of objective from the organizational standpoint. You see that with 2020 vision, and maybe that's a bad word at this point, but
right.
You see that clearly, and you almost expect other people to see that clearly. And I think it takes that ability to tell that story to get that alignment, right? And to get, but on the flip side of that, because I want to go back to kind of what you just said. I love the soundbite of, you're too close to what you did. I think that's super relevant. Like when you think about extracting that story out, that was just one thing that stood out to me. And as you said, when you said some people may be taking notes right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if you could see me, but I was actually over here typing stuff.
Yeah, I take absolutely. I had a mentor a long time ago that says smart people take notes. And so you just never know. And the other thing about that is there's certain people that in their gut, they know specifically, coming out of 2020, maybe people lost their jobs or whatever. And they're like, man, I see people creating businesses. Yeah. Well, what do I do? What am I an expert in? And I heard a stat the other day, and I don't know where people get their numbers, but I totally believe this, that the knowledge-based businesses, like just knowledge-based, is going to be like $1 billion a day industry.
Yeah.
And it's just teaching people something you figured out. And again, it doesn't have to be rocket science. And right. So for that person that's just like, man, Jimmy, there's nothing special about me. Go talk to the people closest to you.
Yeah.
The people that you talk to, like, what is it that just comes naturally to me that I take for granted? I think about it. Like, what do people come to you and ask? Like, we all have that friend that I'm like, hey, does this shirt go with those pants? Hey, where do I put the couch? There, we always have, I have a buddy of mine was asking, I've been in the health and fitness industry for 13 years as well, but I got my go-to guy that I'm like, I have a supplement question or a diet, like, because that he nerds out on that. I
Yeah.
don't go down all the science. I go ask him. And if he says, go eat this, I don't ask why. I just do it because I'm like, Mike said so. So if it's good enough for Mike, it's good enough for me.
Yeah.
All have that something that we do. Some people are like, I was on a podcast the other day. We were talking, and the guy at the end asked, he's like, Jimmy, great resume. He's like, tell me what you're really bad at. And I was like, oh, organization. I was like, anything analytical. I was like, if you put like a spreadsheet in front of me, I just want to put my head on a desk and take a nap. All these things that I have to, but I've had to learn to like push through and surround myself with people that are really good at systems or outsourcing and you understand this when you try to make that step from being a one-man show, like to having other people, and how do you trust that? And so, I say all that to say, the person listening to this right now, there's something you could teach somebody else right now and make a business out of this. You're too close to it, and start asking those around you, hey, what do you come to? Like, what is it that people, or just start thinking, what do people ask me all the time? Is it cooking? Is it how to make a great old fashioned? Is it like, I don't know, like, and nothing is too small. That's what I've learned about this whole knowledge-based business is people, there can be a business out of how to change the oil in your own car to the silliest little whatever, and I think that's what's exciting about where we're going from here. And all the things that people want to like label what was bad about 2020, I think the positive is this shift of, oh, I really can create my own thing for myself if I'm willing to do the work. And this stuff doesn't happen overnight,
Right. Yeah. And I'm assuming that in large part it's platform agnostic, right? I mean, you're not, when you're coaching and kind of exposing these stories and maybe it sounds like maybe even going down a little bit of the path of just helping kind of dream the business plan. Does it go that far? And if so,
I'm so glad you asked this question. So for me, let's use this interview as an example. You told me to introduce myself. Hey, Jimmy, here's your introduction. I'm going to let you introduce yourself. And I went straight into a story. Like I started with the first grade story, right? Yeah. So you're exactly right. When I sit down with somebody, I sit down with a client or in a workshop, and we're going to put together their signature story. One of the steps that we talk about is, great, here's the signature story. Let's say you had a 45-minute keynote to tell the whole thing, right? So I got a 45-minute version where I take you through my entire story. But what if I'm on a podcast and I know Hunter's going to ask me some questions? Cool. I know where I can create some sound bites, still use this same story and take this piece here and this piece here and interweave some of that same thing. What if I'm across from a prospect, right? How do I use that same story in my story to create? And I really do feel like going into 2021, like any professional entrepreneur business, their number one marketing tool is their story, is this idea of who you are, because it creates an immediate know, like, and trust. Let's say you're handling objections, right? Storytelling is the greatest way to handle objections. Instead of throwing stats and figures and you just kind of like get in the argument, because all objections usually are come down to time and money, when the actual issue is value, right? Yeah. And so if it's, hey, I don't know about that. All I know is, I'm going to say that again. So greatest, if you're in sales or you're having, I don't care if you're in sales, if you're having an argument with your significant other, you're trying to talk to children, whatever, like go back to storytelling. Yeah. Storytelling is the greatest way to pivot anything. So I don't know about that. All I know is, and then tell a story. And the cool thing, Hunter, it doesn't even have to be your story. I mean, if we're really talking about this, it's not only let's work and create yours, but what are a few other stories that you can collect? Maybe going back, they start listening to other episodes of your podcast, hearing all these other amazing, go, oh, I heard in an episode this guy's story that really resonated with my world. I can use that story. I told you this. I was like, I just heard about when I was talking about $1 billion a day business and stuff. Man, that was from something else that I heard, but I can use it here. I can use other stories.
Right.
Really, once you just set the radar to start listening for it, it's actually a fun little game, because I keep in my notes section of my phone stories.
Yeah.
Like, here are the money ones, here are the fitness ones, here's the inspirational ones, and I'll use them from time to time.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay. So yeah, just to kind of recap that a little bit, you're coaching them through, how do you take this fully developed story and just thoughtfully be able to kind of tailor it to a certain type of conversation, interaction, platform, things like that.
I mean, you can use it, like, let's think about, I could use a small piece of my 2-minute story and I can make it an Instagram video. I can put it in my IG stories over a couple things. I could obviously make it a YouTube video. I can go live, like storytelling in live. Like, let's say you're trying to point your audience to a call to action. Go live, tell the story and say, hey, if this resonated with you, send me a DM, or if you're pointing them to a sales page or whatever that is. So yeah, but once you have the full story, absolutely, you were right. It doesn't matter what platform it's on, because I can also use this exact same technique across the table having coffee with somebody also. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because some people would dismiss this and say, well, Jimmy, I'm not a public speaker. I don't do keynotes. This doesn't apply to me. And it's simply not true. Like, you can use this in day-to-day conversation. Let's say you're in corporate America, or you lead a team and you're in management. I think storytelling is great for changing a culture, or helping to, hey, we're going to do this promotion, or we're changing the way we think about something, is using, again, could be your story, could be another story, but a story is a great leadership piece. If you're influencing a company, or just a section of, your region, or whatever that happens to be, hey, I oversee 4 people, on my team, you can use storytelling in that facet as well.
Yeah, because at its core, people connect with that, as opposed to some banner headline about an objective or something like that seems more company focused, whereas a story gets a little more on the personal level.
I definitely think it's more effective than another PowerPoint presentation. Like, I just do, it's, you can get to the PowerPoint later, but I would start with the story.
Yeah. Thank you for being a part of this journey. Definitely subscribe and check out Be a Catalyst on Instagram and on Twitter. Also, don't forget to check out the YouTube channel, where you'll find videos in addition to the Catalyst podcast recordings that give a little bit more context around my heart for training, my heart for seeing early to middle managers and first-time leaders really thrive and be a catalyst in the organization that they're in the project that they are after, everything that goes along with that. So thank you for being a part of this. Tune in for the next episode, and remember, be you, be confident, be a catalyst.